What happens when one of country music's biggest stars sits down for what should be a friendly morning talk show interview, only to be blindsided by accusations, personal attacks, and disrespect on live television? It only took 46 seconds of Joy Behar's relentless questioning before Blake Shelton had enough and did something nobody saw coming. Blake Shelton walked onto the View set that morning with his trademark easygoing smile, waving to the studio audience as they erupted in cheers. He was there to talk about his new album, his tour, and maybe share a few laughs. The panel sat ready, Whoopi Goldberg in the center, Joy Behar to her right, Sunny Hostin, Sarah Haynes, and Alyssa Farrah Griffin filling out the rest of the table. Everything seemed normal. Everything seemed fine. Whoopi started things off smoothly, welcoming Blake with genuine warmth. "Blake Shelton, welcome back to The View. It's always great to have you here." Blake settled into his seat, relaxed and smiling. "Thanks for having me. Always love being here with you ladies." The audience applauded again. Sarah jumped in with an easy question about his new music, and Blake answered enthusiastically, talking about the inspiration behind his latest songs, the creative process, how much he loved being back in the studio. The conversation flowed naturally. Everyone was smiling. It was the kind of lighthearted segment morning television thrives on. Then Joy Behar leaned forward. "So Blake," she said, her tone shifting just slightly, "I have to ask you about something that's been bothering a lot of people." Blake's smile didn't fade, but something in his posture changed. He sat up a little straighter. "Sure, what's that?" Joy shuffled some papers in front of her, making a show of it. "You've been pretty quiet about certain political issues, and a lot of your fans have noticed. Some people are saying that your silence is actually saying a lot. What do you have to say about that?" The studio went quiet. The other hosts exchanged quick glances. Blake kept his composure, his voice still friendly but firm. "Well, Joy, I'm here to talk about music today. I've always believed that my job is to entertain people, not tell them how to think or what to believe." Joy wasn't backing down. "But don't you think you have a responsibility? You have millions of fans. Young people look up to you. Don't you think you should use your platform for something more than just selling records?" Sunny Hostin jumped in, trying to soften the moment. "I think what Joy is trying to say is that a lot of artists today are using their voices to speak on important issues." Blake nodded, still maintaining his cool. "And that's great for them. I respect that, but I also respect that people come to my concerts to escape their problems for a while, not to be lectured. They work hard all week, they save up their money, and they want to have a good time. That's what I try to give them." Joy leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. That sounds like a convenient excuse to avoid taking a stand on anything meaningful. The air in the studio changed instantly. You could feel the tension ripple through the audience. Whoopi's eyes widened slightly. Alyssa shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Blake's smile finally faded. "Excuse me?" Blake said, his voice calm but with an edge now. "You heard me," Joy continued, seemingly emboldened. "It's easy to just sing songs and stay neutral when there are real issues affecting real people. Some might call that cowardice." Sarah Haynes tried to intervene. "Joy, I don't think that's fair. Blake has every right to." But Joy cut her off. "No, I want to hear his answer." "Blake, do you think you're being a coward by not speaking out?" Blake took a deep breath, and you could see him choosing his words carefully. "Joy, I don't think wanting to bring people together through music instead of dividing them with politics makes me a coward. I think it makes me someone who understands that not everything needs to be a battle. But some things do need to be battles," Joy shot back. "Some things are worth fighting for. Or are you too comfortable in your mansion to care about regular people anymore?" That was the line. That was the moment everything changed. Blake's jaw tightened. "Now, hold on just a minute. You don't know anything about me or where I come from or what I care about." Whoopi tried to step in. "Okay, let's all just take a breath here." But Joy wasn't done. "I know that you've made millions of dollars from people in small towns all across America, and now you won't even stand up for them when they need someone with a voice like yours." Blake stood up, his microphone still clipped to his shirt. "You know what, Joy? I came here to have a conversation, not to be attacked. I came here to talk about music, to share something positive with people watching at home, but you've decided to turn this into something ugly." The audience was dead silent now. Cameras kept rolling. The other host sat frozen, unsure of what to do or say. Joy stood up too, facing him across the table. "I'm just asking you questions. If you can't handle tough questions, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews." "Tough questions?" Blake's voice rose slightly, not yelling but filled with genuine frustration. You just called me a coward on national television. You just said I don't care about regular people. That's not tough questions, Joy. That's you being disrespectful because you think you can get away with it. Sonny tried again to calm things down. Blake, I think maybe we can all just… Blake turned to her, his voice softening. Sonny, I appreciate you trying to help, but no. I'm not going to sit here and be insulted because I won't play the game the way Joy wants me to play it. He turned back to Joy. You want to know the truth? The truth is that I work with charities all the time. I've helped raise millions for disaster relief, for children's hospitals, for veterans. But I don't tweet about it every 5 minutes because I don't do it for attention. I do it because it's the right thing to do. Joy scoffed. Oh, so now you're a secret philanthropist? How convenient. Alyssa Farah Griffin finally spoke up, her voice firm. Joy, that's enough. Blake is absolutely right. He doesn't owe you or anyone else an explanation for how he chooses to live his life or use his platform. Joy whipped around to face Alyssa. Stay out of this. No, Alyssa said, standing her ground. This is exactly what's wrong with these conversations. You've decided that there's only one right way to be, one right thing to believe, and anyone who doesn't fall in line gets attacked. That's not fair, and it's not right. Joy's face flushed red. I am asking legitimate questions that people want answers to. Blake laughed, but there was no humor in it. No, you're not. You're trying to bully me into saying what you want me to say. And when I won't do it, you're trying to shame me. Whoopi stood up now, her voice carrying authority. Okay, everyone needs to calm down. This is getting out of hand. But Blake was already unclipping his microphone. You know what, Whoopi? I respect you. I really do. But I'm not going to stay here and be disrespected like this. Joy, you owe me an apology, but I'm not holding my breath waiting for it. Joy crossed her arms tighter. I'm not apologizing for asking questions. You're not asking questions, Blake said, his voice steady now, controlled. You're making accusations. There's a difference, and you know it. Sarah Haynes stood up, reaching toward Blake. Blake, please, let's just sit down and talk about this. Blake shook his head. Sarah, you seem like a genuinely nice person, and I appreciate you trying to make this better, but I'm done. I came here in good faith, and I've been treated like I'm on trial for not being who Joy Behar thinks I should be. He looked directly at Joy. You sit up here every day and talk about tolerance and acceptance and treating people with respect, but the second someone doesn't agree with you, all of that goes out the window. Do you see the hypocrisy in that? Joy's voice dripped with sarcasm. Oh, please, don't lecture me about hypocrisy. Why not? Blake challenged. You've been lecturing me since I sat down. What makes you so special that you can dish it out but not take it? The audience started murmuring. Some people were nodding. Others looked uncomfortable. The producers in the control room were probably losing their minds, but the cameras kept rolling. Sonny stood up, trying one more time. Blake, I think there's been a misunderstanding here. Maybe we can all just reset and… Blake turned to her, and his voice was kind. Sonny, there's no misunderstanding. Joy made herself very clear. She thinks I'm a coward who doesn't care about people. She said it right to my face on live television. There's no walking that back. He looked around at all of them. I've been doing interviews for 20 years. I've been asked hard questions before. I've been challenged on things. But there's a way to do it that's respectful, and then there's what happened here today. Whoopi tried once more. Blake, as the moderator of this show, I apologize if things got heated. Blake nodded at her. I appreciate that, Whoopi. I really do. But it's not your apology I need. All eyes turned to Joy. She stood there, arms still crossed, chin raised defiantly. I stand by everything I said. Blake stared at her for a long moment, then shook his head slowly. Then we don't have anything else to talk about. He started walking toward the exit. The stage manager looked panicked, not sure whether to stop him or let him go. The audience watched in stunned silence. Alyssa called after him. Blake, for what it's worth, I think you handled this with a lot of grace. Blake paused and turned back, giving her a small smile. Thanks, Alyssa. I appreciate that. Joy couldn't help herself. Oh, how touching. The coward gets a participation trophy on his way out. That stopped Blake in his tracks. He turned around slowly, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. You know what, Joy? I feel sorry for you. I really do. You're so consumed with being right, with winning every argument, that you can't even see when you're wrong. You can't even see when you've crossed a line. He took a step back toward the table. I built my career by treating people with respect. Crew members, fans, other artists, even journalists who wrote hit pieces about me. Because that's who I am. That's how I was raised. And no matter how much you try to paint me as some villain because I won't dance to your tune, the people who actually know me know the truth. Joy rolled her eyes. Are you done with your speech? Almost, Blake said. Here's the thing, Joy. You asked me if I think I have a responsibility to use my platform. I do. But my responsibility is to lift people up, not tear them down. My responsibility is to bring joy into people's lives, not make them angry or scared or divided. He gestured around the studio. You use your platform every day to tell people what to think, who to vote for, what to be outraged about, and that's your choice. But don't you dare sit there and tell me I'm doing it wrong just because I'm doing it differently. Sarah had tears in her eyes now. Blake, I'm so sorry this happened. Blake's expression softened when he looked at her. Don't be sorry, Sarah. This isn't your fault. You've been nothing but kind since I got here. He looked at Sunny. You too, Sunny, and Alyssa. You all tried to keep this civil. Then his eyes landed on Joy again. But you, Joy, you decided that humiliating a guest was more important than having a real conversation. You decided that scoring points was more important than showing basic human decency. Joy's voice was sharp. If you're so decent, why are you running away? I'm not running away, Blake said calmly. I'm walking away. There's a difference. Running away is what you do when you're scared. Walking away is what you do when you know your worth and you refuse to let someone treat you like garbage. Whoopi stood between them now, literally trying to keep the peace. Okay, I think we need to go to commercial. But Blake wasn't finished. You want to know what really bothers me about all this, Joy? It's not even the insults. I'm a big boy. I can handle someone not liking me. What bothers me is that there are people watching at home right now, regular people with real problems, who turned on their TV hoping to smile for a few minutes. And instead, they're watching this circus. His voice grew more passionate. They're watching you tear into someone for no good reason. They're watching you prove every negative stereotype about this show. And worst of all, they're learning that if they don't fall in line with a certain way of thinking, they'll be treated the same way. Joy's voice was cold. Spare me the crocodile tears. See, that right there? Blake pointed at her. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You can't even let someone express a genuine feeling without mocking them. Everything has to be cynical. Everything has to be a fight. Alyssa spoke up again. Joy, I really think you should apologize. Blake didn't do anything wrong. Joy spun on her. Oh, now you're ganging up on me? Nobody's ganging up on you, Sunny said quietly. But Alyssa has a point. This went too far. Joy looked around at her co-hosts, and for just a moment, there was something like uncertainty in her eyes. But it passed quickly, replaced by defiance. I don't apologize for speaking truth to power. Blake actually laughed at that. Truth to power? Joy, you're a multi-millionaire sitting on a national television show. I'm a country singer from Oklahoma. Where exactly is the better power imbalance here? The audience murmured their agreement. Some people even started clapping. Joy's face turned redder. Don't try to play the victim. I'm not playing anything, Blake said. I'm just pointing out the absurdity of your position. You're acting like you're some kind of underdog speaking truth, when really, you're just being mean to someone who came on your show as a guest. Whoopi raised her hands. Okay, seriously, we need to. Blake cut her off gently. Whoopi, it's okay. I'm leaving anyway, but I want to say one more thing. He looked directly into the camera. To anyone watching who feels like they can't speak up because they're afraid of being attacked, I see you. To anyone who's been made to feel small because they don't think the right way or say the right things, I get it. And to anyone who's ever been bullied by someone who thinks their platform gives them the right to be cruel, you're not alone. Then he looked back at Joy. And to you, Joy, I hope you take a long look in the mirror tonight and ask yourself if this is really who you want to be. Is this the legacy you want? Being the person who attacks guests? Being the person who can't have a civil conversation with someone who sees the world differently? Joy's voice was barely controlled now. Get out of here. Just get out. Blake smiled, but it was sad. I'm already gone. He turned and walked toward the exit again. This time, nobody tried to stop him. The audience didn't know whether to clap or stay silent. Some did both. As Blake reached the edge of the stage, he paused one last time and looked back. You know what the saddest part of all this is? I actually used to respect you, Joy. I used to think you were tough but fair. I used to think you actually cared about having real discussions. But today you showed me that none of that matters to you. The only thing that matters is being right, even if you have to be cruel to get there. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. For the first time since the argument started, she seemed at a loss for words. Blake nodded to himself, as if confirming something he'd suspected. That's what I thought. And then he was gone, walking off the stage, leaving behind a panel in chaos, an audience in shock, and a moment that nobody who watched it would ever forget. Whoopi stood at the table, looking at the camera with an expression that was hard to read. Sarah wiped at her eyes. Sunny stared down at her hands. Alyssa looked like she wanted to say something more but didn't know what. And Joy just stood there, arms still crossed, jaw clenched, refusing to show any crack in her armor. The stage manager finally made the call. We're going to commercial. We're going to commercial right now. The lights dimmed slightly, the cameras pulled back, but the damage was done. What should have been a simple, friendly interview about music and touring and the joy of performing had turned into something else entirely. It had turned into a masterclass in how not to treat a guest. It had turned into a perfect example of what happens when ego and ideology override basic respect. And Blake Shelton, who had walked onto that stage with a smile and good intentions, had walked off with his dignity intact and his point made. He didn't storm off in anger. He didn't throw things or curse or lose his temper. He simply stood his ground, called out what was wrong, and removed himself from a toxic situation. In those final moments before commercial break, as the panel sat in uncomfortable silence and the audience processed what they'd just witnessed, one thing became crystal clear. Blake Shelton hadn't been kicked off The View. He had chosen to leave, and that choice said everything about who he was as a person. He had been invited as a guest, attacked as an adversary, and left as someone who knew his worth. Joy Behar had tried to make him feel small, to force him into a box, to humiliate him into submission. And it had backfired spectacularly. Because at the end of the day, respect isn't something you can demand. It's something you earn. And in 46 seconds of relentless, disrespectful questioning, Joy Behar had lost whatever respect Blake Shelton might have had for her. She had shown her true colors, and they weren't pretty. The commercial break couldn't come fast enough for everyone involved, but the moment was already out there, already being clipped and shared and discussed. People would talk about this for days, weeks, months. They would debate who was right and who was wrong. They would analyze every word, every gesture, every expression. But the people who actually watched it happen, who saw it unfold in real time, they already knew the truth. They knew who had walked in trying to connect and who had decided confrontation was more important. They knew who had tried to keep things civil and who had kept throwing grenades. They knew who had maintained their composure under attack and who had done the attacking. The View had been the setting for countless memorable moments over the years. Heated debates, emotional revelations, surprise announcements. But this moment, this clash between Blake Shelton and Joy Behar, would go down as one of the most uncomfortable, most raw, most revealing moments in the show's history. Not because of what was said about politics or responsibility or platforms, but because it showed, in stark terms, the difference between someone who respects others, even when disagreeing, and someone who believes their own righteousness justifies any level of rudeness. Blake Shelton left that studio with his head held high, and Joy Behar was left standing at that table, surrounded by co-hosts who had clearly been uncomfortable with how she'd handled things, facing an audience that had watched her cross lines that shouldn't have been crossed. The cameras would come back on in a few minutes. The show would continue. They would try to move past what had happened, to shift to lighter topics, to pretend everything was fine. But everyone in that studio, everyone watching at home, would remember this moment. They would remember the day a country music star stood up to a talk show host and refused to be bullied. They would remember the day Joy Behar pushed too hard and lost the fight she'd started. And most importantly, they would remember that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away.